Before I go into house rules, the boring house rules, please could I ask Imam Ghulam Rasul to recite Surah Fatiha, which is a powerful prayer between us humans and our Lord, where we attest to his sovereignty, seek his help and guidance, and ask him to shower his blessing upon us at this gathering. Please, Imam Ghulam Rasul, could I ask you to lead us into the event with Surah Fatiha, please.
Good morning and Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I'm going to recite the first chapter of the Holy Quran, which is called Surah Al-Fatiha. The translation literally is the opener. The Islamic exegetes tell us that this means it's the opener to God's blessings. Now I'll begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Translation: I seek refuge in God from Satan the accursed, and I begin in the name of God, Allah most affectionate, forever merciful. Praise be to Allah, Lord of the universe, the most affectionate, forever merciful, Master of the day of reckoning. Indeed, you alone we worship, and in you alone we seek help. Guide us in the straight path, and the path of those that you have rewarded, and protect us from the path of those who have gone astray and earned your anger, and protect us from those who are emotionally extreme. Ameen.
Thank you very much, Imam Ghulam Rasul. And now to the housekeeping bit before I properly welcome you to this event. Again, please, I do notice a few people have left their mics on. So please, if you could kindly turn the mics off, that'll be really helpful, because it could put some of the speakers off if your mics are not turned off. If you can, I would really love for everyone to keep their cameras on. I know we can't be together physically, but it just creates that atmosphere, and it'll be really nice to see all your faces as well. So please, if you can, I mean, unless you're having a bad hair day like me, or you're having your lunch while you're listening in, otherwise, please do leave your cameras on. So on behalf of the Bahu Trust, we'd like to welcome all our guests today. The founding chairman of the Bahu Trust, Sheikh Sultan Niaz Ul Hassan, cannot be with us today, sadly, but he sends his sincere apologies and has asked me to tell you all his thoughts and prayers are with you all. The emergency services are very special to us here at the Bahu Trust, as they are with everyone here. We have staff who either work with or for them. We also have frontline emergency services staff who regularly worship here. We have held thank you dinners here. Unfortunately, we can't do that for our friends this year for obvious reasons. We've not, so this Interfaith Thanksgiving Hour is an opportunity for us to bring together all our friends and pay tribute really to the sacrifices made by those on the front line during Interfaith Week. This being Interfaith Week. Thank you to all our friends and supporters who have helped in some shape or form. There's a poster that should be shared on your screen. So some of those partners who have supported us, their logos are actually on the poster you see. But there are others who have supported us as well, such as Amrik, who's out there. I don't know if Benita's there, and a lot of other friends. I'm going to miss out names, but I'm really, really grateful behind the scenes, the support that you have given the Bahu Trust in making sure this event happens. And today it's really proud moment for me to launch this really important event. Someone asked me last week if there are any VIP guests attending the service, and I said yes. There's about 50 to 60 of them, and that's how I really felt. And what I meant was every single one of you today is a VIP. Those who are guests listening in, giving up your precious time to be part of this service, to the faith leaders who we will be hearing from soon, to the representatives from our amazing emergency services, whose reflections I'm sure everyone is really looking forward to. You are genuinely and honestly all VIP guests to us. Just quickly to give some context to the proceedings, it has meant so much to many people how our emergency services have stepped up during these difficult and unprecedented times, often really going into the unknown just to keep us and our families safe. This went a long way in really being the inspiration for so many of us to become volunteers, either setting up food banks or supporting the most vulnerable in our community. We will be hearing from some of those representatives from the police service, from the fire service, the paramedic service, and amazing individuals from a medical background. This is where I get a little bit emotional, and as I have been saying this in my head the last few days, it does make my heart sink. But to further give this event context and give it a more of a meaning of what this means to us, is I want to recall a really sad story where a local man, a close friend, a gentle, kind man, Mushtaq Ahmed, succumbed to the deadly virus very early on in the pandemic. It was really heartbreaking news for the family and for the wider community and for us at the Bahu Trust. But what was even more heartbreaking was that few weeks later, his beloved daughter, Safa Alam, also passed away after contracting the deadly virus. Safa was a professional career nurse before training as a midwife at Birmingham's Women's Hospital, then progressing to the specialist role of risk management midwife. The family had lost two beloved members of their family, really sending shockwaves throughout the whole of the community. Rachel Carter, head of midwifery at the Women's Hospital, said Safa was loved by all of us here at Birmingham Women's Hospital. Not only was she generous with her time, approachable, and extremely hardworking, a true model, but she was also a dear friend and a glue to our team. Safa's uncle is with us on this Zoom event today. So I just want to say to you, Nasir Hussain, we send our heartfelt condolences. Please do pass on our deepest regrets to the rest of the family, and our prayers are with you all. Today is for the countless Safa Alams who selflessly did the job that they love to do, keeping us all safe and protected. Our prayers for those who continue to protect us. May God protect you all. So I'm going to hand it over to some of our faith leaders now to give their personal reflections and views. First, I'd like to bring in Dr. Hardeep Singh, who represents the Sikh community and perspective. Dr. Hardeep Singh is a consultant pathologist working at the Sheffield's Teaching Hospital NHS Trust. He specializes in cancer biopsy diagnosis. Dr. Hardeep Singh was born and bred in Derby, UK. His medical training was undertaken at Guy's Hospital Medical School, London, and Cambridge University. In his spare time, he does environmental volunteering with EcoSeek UK. He also enjoys bird watching and is a second dan black belt in karate. So I won't be messing with you, Dr. Hardeep Singh. Please do give us your reflections. Thank you.
Thank you. That's very kind of you, Abdullah. And thank you for such a invite to a fantastic gathering of like-minded people to share reflections. So I caught COVID-19 in March of this year and was off work for 10 days. I was one of the lucky ones though, because the infection was mild and I returned to work soon after. Doctors, nurses, paramedics, pharmacists, care workers, and all emergency services have been in the front line during this pandemic, doing some incredible work. When I look at their example, I am reminded of an episode from Sikh history that epitomizes the practice of fearlessness, unconditional service, love and compassion, and optimism, something that all frontline workers have shown in abundance this year. In 1704, the Sikhs were engaged in a battle with Mughal soldiers. During the battle, a Sikh named Bhai Ganaiya was seen serving water to wounded Mughal enemy soldiers. The Sikhs were not pleased at the sight of one of their own attending to the needs of the enemy. The news got back to Guru Gobind Singh, the 10th Sikh master, who summoned Bhai Ganaiya into his court. When asked why he was serving water to the enemy soldiers, he replied, "Master, I saw no Mughal or Sikh. I only saw human beings with the same spirit and met the need of the moment. Besides, I was only carrying out your teachings. No one is my enemy. No one is a stranger. I get along with everyone." Guru Gobind Singh Ji was overjoyed and hugged Bhai Ganaiya and told him to also attend to the wounds of the soldiers and handed him some bandages and some medicinal ointment. This all happened 150 years before Henry Durant established the International Red Cross movement in 1863. This episode from Sikh history illustrates the universal human values of selfless service, treating all equally, service with compassion and love, caring and sharing. It is these values that the emergency services have shown in abundance during the pandemic. The same values have also been shown through members of the general public when attending to the needs of fellow members of their local community. An example of this being the service of Guru Ka Langar, the free vegetarian food cooked in hundreds of Sikh gurudwaras up and down the length of the UK and served lovingly to those in need of food. I'd like to congratulate the Bahu Trust for organising today's event, because such events create cohesion, understanding and love, which is much required to heal hearts and minds. Thank you very much. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
Thank you, Dr. Hardeep Singh, for those really warm, inspirational words. I'd like to move on now to Jessica Foster. The Reverend Jessica Foster is a deacon in the Church of England. She teaches interfaith engagement to trainee clergy and is a chaplain to the Bishop of Birmingham. Over the last 10 years, Jess has been very involved in bringing communities together, particularly for social action, women's leadership programs, and to build close, trusting friendships across the faiths. And she happens to be a really close friend of mine. Reverend Jessica Foster, I hand it over to you.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be here with so many old friends and so many people that are serving our neighbourhoods and our communities in our cities at the moment. So just over an hour ago, we were led in 2 minutes of silence to remember all those who had died in military service. This reflection was led by Bishop David, the Bishop of Birmingham, and during it, he reminded us of a memorial that simply says, "Say of us, we gave up our todays for your tomorrows." I'm aware that now, again, in this time of pandemic, people like you are doing that. I won't forget how many doctors, medics, nurses and paramedics have lost their lives to this virus, just as we heard from Abdullah earlier and from you, Hardeep. I won't forget the people, the firefighters and the police officers who cannot socially isolate, but need to spend time with the public day after day, often at great risk to their own well-being and health. You are the people who run towards danger so we can run away from it. You are the people who spend time with the ill, the confused, the vulnerable and the disturbed, so we can stay safely behind our own front doors. We appreciate what you're doing massively, even if we do complain sometimes about lockdown. The Bible says in the New Testament that the opposite of love is fear. Not hatred, not jealousy, not anger, but fear. In John's letter to the church, he goes on to say that perfect love casts out all fear, because fear has to do with punishment. When we understand that death and loss are not punishments, we stop fearing. I don't believe for a moment that this virus is a punishment from God. I know some other religious people do, but personally, I don't feel that's how God works. I believe it's a consequence of the way we've lived without due regard for all creation. And as such, I believe it's a judgment. I believe that because I believe that judgment is not to do with punishment either, but is a revelation, a time of revealing truth. And many, many truths have been revealed to us all at this time. We have seen the divisions and inequalities in our own society. We have seen our vulnerability as human beings. We see our interconnectedness globally and with our neighbours. And we see who are our heroines and our heroes. Recognising so many people here as our heroes and heroines, I want to thank you for all you do every day, for the good of your neighbours and for all humanity. I want to thank you for running towards danger so we can stay safely at home. I want to thank you for overcoming fear to demonstrate love in all its fullness, which means courage, commitment, knowledge, care, and concern. As a small way of thanking you, I want to offer this prayer for you and for all of us today. Holy God, through the words and life of Jesus, you taught us to love our neighbour and to care for those in need, as if we were caring for you. In this time of anxiety, give us strength to comfort the fearful, to tend the sick, to assure the isolated of our love and your love. Be with us all at this time. Fill our hearts with courage, and may your perfect love cast out all our fears. Amen.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for your words. They were really beautiful and really powerful words. And I love the way you brought in the fact that we have to overcome fear to find love. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to bring in another really good friend of mine, Rabbi Margaret Jacoby, who is a rabbi at Birmingham Progressive Synagogue and a member of the Birmingham Faith Leaders Group. Margaret, please could you take it away? Over to you.
Thank you, Abdullah. Thank you so much for asking me to take part in this special remembrance. It's so moving to be a part of it, especially after the introduction you gave and the story you told. And I feel any words really aren't adequate to what our emergency workers are doing. But I want to begin by quoting the words of the Mishnah, a Jewish text from the 2nd century, which teaches us that whoever saves a single human soul is as if they save an entire world. And our emergency workers have saved so many worlds. There's no greater mitzvah in Judaism than the saving of life. And that is what you do whilst risking your lives every day. There's no greater work than the work of the emergency services, especially at this time of COVID, when you give yourself so selflessly. And words aren't adequate to express our thanks for your tireless work. And so I'm simply going to, like Jessica, offer you a blessing, a short one, but I hope one that will remain with you. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, that God may give you strength in all the godly work that you do, and that God may bless you with peace. Amen.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Margaret Jacoby. Beautiful words, and I loved what you said about he who saves a soul saves an entire world. I think that really sums up what I feel we feel about our emergency services who do this day in, day out. For our next speaker, I'd like to bring in Jennifer Lusada, who representing the Hindu community. Jenny is a social prescribing link worker for Whole Green Health Northbrook Group Practice and Swanswell Medical Center covering Birmingham and Solihull. Previously, she was an IPS employment specialist and managed a service that helped those with suspected or diagnosed neurodiversity and mental health into employment, education and training. Jenny is passionate about tackling social and health inequalities to help health, well-being and opportunity. In her spare time, Jenny loves to cook, online shop and reluctantly exercise. Jenny, could I hand it over to you, please?
Hi, yes, I'm Jenny. I'm social prescriber, as Abdullah just said. I'm born and raised Hindu. Actually, my mom's Hindu and my dad's actually an atheist, so I've had quite a different upbringing, probably. Mom is from Mauritius. Her views on religion have always been very spiritual, and she's always taught me not only about Hinduism, but to also learn about all the other religions to understand what their perspective and where they come from. This has definitely fed into the way I work, probably the reason I got into the work I'm doing. And actually with Diwali on Saturday, I thought it's quite a fitting topic really with everything that's going on with COVID. COVID-19 has been extremely hard on primary care. The doctors, the GPs, they're the first people that people usually call when something is going wrong. I mean, sometimes they call us having heart attacks and you like call an ambulance. So COVID-19, they've come to us about anything and everything. And we've had such amazing support from the community, including Bahu Trust for things like support around funerals, culturally sensitive support, food bank support. Diwali is known as the Festival of Light, but Mom always taught me it is looking at a new start. It is light over darkness, triumph of good over evil. And I think with it coming this weekend, it's kind of provided me and my family with some sort of optimism about the future. It's been such a difficult year, and this second wave we're going into is definitely looking like more of a mental health wave. And knowing that people are rallying around each other in the community of all different faiths, all different backgrounds to help one another has been really inspiring. Like I said, I said to Abdullah when I said I'd happily talk at this, I'm quite a laid back Hindu. I don't know if that's whether it's probably my age, but it's definitely a big part of who I am. It's definitely steered me in probably the direction I've gone in. My mom's a nurse, so we're very close, and we are passionate about working in the emergency services and helping other people in the community. So yeah, thank you for asking me to speak today.
Thank you so much, Jenny. I loved what you said, looking at it as light over darkness, and there is, I'm sure, light at the end of the tunnel, and we will come out of this stronger. But I really appreciate that you've come on, and I think you've done an amazing job representing your faith today. I'd like to move on now to the final faith leader, and I'm bringing in, you've heard him earlier reciting Surah Fatiha, Hafiz Imam Ghulam Rasul, who from the Muslim faith. Imam Ghulam Rasul is a UK born and bred British Imam. He is qualified secondary school teacher and an independent charity advisor. He's a trustee at the Bahu Trust. He is the son of a former corporal in the British Army who served in India. He's a joyful family man with 5 sons, 3 grandchildren, and his dear loving wife, the caring mom and the homemaker. He volunteers his time for education, spiritual interfaith, and social cohesion projects, both in the UK and overseas. He strongly believes in building alliances of virtue, common good, and serving the diversity of humanity. And believe me, it goes on, but we just haven't got the time. So over to you, Imam Ghulam Rasool. You're on mute, Imam Ghulam Rasool.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. I would like to welcome everybody on behalf of the Board of Trustees for coming to this prestigious gathering on Zoom itself. This is an event where we're giving thanks for the emergency services, for the blue light services. And the concept of thanks is a big part in the Holy Quran. In the Islamic theology, it tells us that if you think good, the moment you start thinking good, light enters your body, light enters your mind, and light enters your soul. And regarding evil thoughts, they don't impact you until you act upon them. So if you think virtuous, you start you receive reward from God and light from God in your being from the moment it comes within your consciousness. And so therefore, giving thanks is one of the greatest virtues. In the Holy Quran, it says, لَإِن شَكَرْتُمْ لَأَزِيدَنَّكُمْ. Those who give thanks, God will give them more. In another verse, in another statement, the Prophet Muhammad says, "La yashkurullaha ma la yashkurun nas." He who does not thank the people is not thankful to God. A very, very important statement. Also, the Quran says, also the Prophet Muhammad says that the best of humanity are those who bring benefit and excellence to others selflessly. And there's another verse in the Holy Quran which says to save one life is to save the whole of humanity. And if you go in that Muslim world, you hear the word shukran, shukran jazilan. You probably hear the word jazakallahu khairan. And these are words of thanks. May Allah's reward is superior to the thanks that you have given me. You have said thank you to me. But God reward you with something much more superior. And so these are, and so in the Islamic kind of theology, the idea of thanks is around the very being and essence of all human beings and all Muslims. And that's very important to us. And therefore, we here express our respect and thanks of the work of especially the Blue Light Emergency Services do each day, every day of the year. And I echo the sentiments of all the previous speakers, is how they make our life easy and how they make our tomorrow secure. We are very grateful to our emergency colleagues, in the emergency service colleagues in the NHS, ambulance, paramedic, police, fire and rescue service for the incredible support they have given us over the past few months during the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has been a true demonstration of the emergency services at their best, and we see that this caring group of professionals have come together at the public's time of need to meet this national emergency head on. So on behalf of Bahu Trust, we'd like to say a huge thanks to them all for their hard work and dedication. Just personally, I've just spent a few days in hospital in the last 2 weeks, and my 4 days experience, it's been quite a, all the things I've read negatively on social media here, etc., sometimes on Facebook, but my experience has been 100% positive. Right from the moment I was picked up when I fainted inside the GP surgery, and from there all the way to the hospital, and then been looked after in the A&E, then moving to the wards and moving from one hospital to another hospital, the nurses, the doctors, everything. I found it completely flawless and faultless. And I give thanks to God for giving us the NHS and providing us those people in emergency. In the Islamic tradition, one of the best ways of giving thanks to God is to offer 2 units of prayer or a prostration of thanks to God. And this is something which I have done, and which many Muslims do. And I think it's a tribute to the emergency services, the blue light services, to put their life at risk every day. Like, we are all in isolation. We're trying to stay away. When I was in hospital, I saw nurses with visors on, with masks on, with glasses on, some with goggles on, doctors with extra clothing on, and still the element of care was there. They wanted to be near you. They had to touch you. They're very tactile in their kind of engagement with you. And that, if they were afraid, and that can only happen if they truly care. And it's not about monetary benefit. It's about the essence of care ingrained within their nature. And that is something that we honor and we salute. On behalf of the Bahu Trust, we salute the Blue Light Services and emergency services and give thanks to all those who have come together in this alliance of virtue, in alliance of faith, to honor them and thank them. And I thank Brother Abdullah for bringing this together and gives us a great opportunity to express ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imam Ghulam Rasool, for those beautiful words. I loved one of your sentences, very simple. You said, thank God for the NHS. And we should be thanking good people. It's our Islamic duty to thank them. So your words, Imam Ghulam Rasool, brings us swiftly into now bringing in some of those amazing people who we've just been talking about, some of those people from within the Blue Light Service to speak and reflect and say a few words. So first of all, I'd like to bring in Joe Poynton and his colleague Emma, who I saw on the line earlier. Joe Poynton is a watch commander at Highgate Fire Station, just a stone's throw away from here, and is on Blue Watch. He has been in the fire service for 14 years and has always been proud to serve the people of the West Midlands. Joe and Emma, are you guys, can I hand it over to you?
Hiya, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Well, firstly, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone for inviting us along. It's a pleasure and an honour to share this event with you. I must apologise, you might hear a bit of racket over the other side of the room. That's my 3-year-old clattering away with his toys. I've tried to bribe him with TV and toys while I speak to you all. But yes, it's humbling, and it's quite moving for you to arrange something like this for the emergency service and take the time to acknowledge what the emergency services do. And it's a bit overwhelming. And I know that myself and a lot of my colleagues and across the organisation would be squirming a little bit underneath all this praise, because we sometimes feel as though it's a bit, you know, we're just doing our job, we're turning up to work, and just like everyone else in the community, we're contributing our little bit to keeping society moving. And I think it's easy to recognise when you've got a badge and a uniform that we're part of that, and we're easy to isolate. But we should also take the time for the other millions of people who are helping keeping society going, like the people doing food distribution and the charities and the teachers and, you know, even the refuse collectors and the supermarket workers. Without any of these people, we would grind to a halt. And although it's an honour for you to be sort of thanking us, it's we're just one cog in that massive machine. So you know, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge those people as well. In the fire service over the period of COVID, it's been a strange time for us all. We've had to take part in some new activities, including supporting the sort of coroner's service with collecting of people who've sadly passed away as a result of COVID-19. And that was, as you can imagine, quite an unnerving task for my colleagues. But I think the biggest thing that is harder to adjust to for us is a massive part of our role in the fire service is not so much the iconic firefighting and dealing with road traffic collisions and that kind of thing. Everybody's very aware of that, but a huge proportion of our job is going out and dealing with the vulnerable members of community and keeping people safe and doing fire safety education and going into people's homes and making sure that people are safe and well. And of course, during lockdown, that hasn't been as easy for us to do. It's something that we're still striving to do in alternative ways. But it's worrying for us that we're not able to have the usual impact in those areas. So with the support of people like the Bahu Trust and our other colleagues, we are still able to get out there and do as much as we can. But it's times like this when you realise just how close to the edge some people in our community are. And I think thanks to people like yourselves and the people that I mentioned earlier, they're not being forgotten and they are being supported in the best way that they can. So I'll just let Emma introduce herself briefly. She's one of my colleagues and a firefighter at Highgate. I'll hand you over.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, my name's Emma. I've not got as long in as Joe. I've only been in 2.5 years, so I'm still relatively new. But just to reiterate what Joe said, we're adapting and changing our procedures throughout COVID to still try and reach our most vulnerable. So he mentioned the safe and well visits. That's still a key part of what we do, talking to our most vulnerable. So we've been using technology quite heavily, relying on phone calls or texting deaf communities so that we can still give them fire safety advice and help them. It's been quite difficult and challenging adapting, but we're getting there slowly.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. I'm just gonna say thank you. Thanks, Emma. Thanks for that. I was going to say, I think we, in some respects, are the lucky ones because there's been an element of normality within the fire service. I still get to go to work, and I still get to do the thing that I love with people who I respect and have fun with. And a lot of people who are working from home are really struggling. So we also have to acknowledge the blessings that we have with regards to the job that we do. But yeah, that was just something I forgot to mention earlier. But thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joe and Emma. I have to say you've ruined my concluding comments now, because a lot of what you said were going to form part of my concluding comments, and absolutely agree. You are a humble person. I know many people within the emergency services are humble, but you're absolutely right. The refuse collectors, the bus drivers, the staff who clean the hospitals, they all should be thanked and absolutely remembered. So thank you for that, Joe. Next, I'm going to bring in Simon King. He's the head of operations for Bedfordshire and Luton at the East of England Ambulance Service. Simon has over 30 years service at East of England Ambulance, where he started as an ambulance care assistant in the non-emergency patient transport service and has spent most of his career primarily as a paramedic and operations manager, including leading the Emergency Operations Center. Simon is also chair of the Christian Ambulance Association and an independent charity supporting ambulance staff, is the chair of the recently launched multi-faith network East of England Ambulance Service, and is also leading on BAME community support initiatives within the trust. Simon, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. That's quite a big build-up. Thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me, because I can see from most of the audience that I'm geographically a little bit of an outsider. So I'm really grateful to be with you. Thank you. I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you, and I've thought about this in terms of the positives and the challenges. So for me and my colleagues, there have been some real positives, perhaps surprising to say, but I guess everybody would be very familiar with the NHS and key workers clap on the doorsteps, which might seem like a small thing, but that level of community engagement and support has been something that we've never really tangibly recognised and felt before. Probably for us more personally, it's been amazing the number of gifts that have been dropped off at ambulance stations throughout the region. Just a laughable number, a deluge of gifts. Some of those, lots of them food-based, which are always popular, and some, like some of the communities that are represented here, actually cooking food on a daily basis to deliver sufficient for all of the staff in their area every day. A phenomenal partnership and encouragement to the staff. And I think that's had a real impact on people in terms of the value of the community and the value of people's faith. But then also the support of probably more consistently by some of those who work immediately around us. So in our area, for example, the fire rescue service, just phenomenal in terms of significant numbers of secondments of staff coming to work with us, directly working on the ambulances in a way that we could never have foreseen had we not had this challenge previously. So we're incredibly grateful to our community around us, both from a professional perspective and just more broadly for the citizens that we rub shoulder with every day. And I guess we normally take one another for granted, but it's been a real opportunity to express that. So just wanted to say thank you to everybody. But there have been some real challenges. Probably the biggest thing I think I've noticed is a significant increase in the contact with people's loss and grief. So just a bit of perspective on that. Typically, for an ambulance crew, if someone is acutely unwell, they'll usually convey them to hospital, but often with a relative. And so the point of ultimate loss, departure, grief is often in another environment. But in the context of COVID, particularly in the first wave, because we couldn't take any escorts in ambulances with people because of the infection prevention control measures required, we would often need to manage that saying goodbye to somebody in the living room or in the road outside on a much more regular basis than we've ever experienced before. And I know that staff found that really difficult over and over again and had a lot of personal impact on them. I think the second one was, in a way I've never seen before, is a fear for themselves and their family of what they may be taking home that day. And you said I've worked in the ambulance service for what feels like a ridiculously long time now. I feel like I only joined yesterday, really. But here we are 30 years later. And one of the things I've always loved about the ambulance service is that there's a real robustness about people. It pretty much doesn't matter what comes over the hill. They'll just deal with it and then cope afterwards. This is the first time I think I've seen our staff really struggle with the not knowing and the potential implication of taking someone home to their family. And that's brought a lot of pain and fear amongst the staff. And then I think the third part for me has been, and then finally, has been the impact on not seeing families. So particularly for those who've got more vulnerable children or partners at home, for example, needing just to move out for a period of time. I know colleagues in other services would have experienced that the same, and in some ways more than our people have. But to some, it might sound quite glamorous kind of living in a hotel for a period of time, but it's quite a soulless environment, isn't it? Where you live on your own with nobody around you and you don't get to see your family for weeks on end. And I think that's had a big impact on some of our people as well. So they were my reflections. To summarise, just a great opportunity to celebrate, enjoy and appreciate one another in the community and feel that appreciation as we never have before, but also acknowledging that the toll that it's taken on our people. And I'm not sure we know what that is yet, and that may well go on for many years to come. But thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. I really appreciate it. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Simon, for those words and those really important reflections, really giving us an insight into how some of your colleagues are feeling. I mean, sometimes we see them as superhuman, but to know that they have those same fears that all of us have, it really kind of hits home how much we need to show our appreciation as we are today, and letting them know that we do remember them during this time and going forward as well. So do convey our thanks and gratitude. And also the thing you said about the way people are dealing with grief when they lose someone. The nurse I mentioned at the beginning, Safa Alam, we were quite close family friends. We couldn't go to see each other. We were unable to give our respects and give our condolences in the normal way. So it's really impacted us as a community. And so yeah, thank you so much for joining us. You're not an outsider anymore, Simon. So thank you very much. I'd like to just move on now to another really good friend, Dr. Ibrahim. Dr. Ibrahim works for a GP partnership working in Birmingham for the past 18 years. He has a group of surgeries and looks after about 65,000 patients and employs over 200 staff. He's involved in teaching medical students, Foundation 2 doctors and GP trainees. He's married with 3 children and loves cycling, particularly along the canal. Dr. Ibrahim, over to you.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Abdullah, for inviting me and the Sultan Bahu Trust. It's so lovely to see all our wonderful friends and family. If you don't know me, I'm the other half of Mahmouda Qureshi, who's in the Bahamas at the moment. You can see her lovely background there. So I know we're very short of time, so I'm going to sort of keep my talk to quite brief and a few points. So Abdullah, if I overrun, please just let me know and give me a signal. I'll shut up. You know, I work in a huge multidisciplinary team. So I am responsible for around 200 staff members spread across 10 different sites. And I often think, you know, if you listen to the media, often the NHS equals hospitals. And, you know, we hear lots about hospitals and so on. But I'm sure you know that about 90% of patient experience, patient contact actually happens in general practice. It's only about 10% of the whole NHS activity that actually occurs in hospitals. So for the last, you know, since March, it's been a tremendously busy and stressful time for a lot of our staff because we've had to adopt and change and so on. And you know, patients are always asking me, doctor, when can I come to see you? Why can't I see you? Often they've got a cough and so on. I have to explain to them, you know, if I catch COVID from you, then potentially 8,000 patients will be without a GP and all that kind of stuff. So I have to protect myself first to be able to provide the care for all our patients. So we've had a tremendous change. So I'm sure you guys have noticed that it's all happening on telephone calls, video consultations. We're still open. We do still see patients face to face. About a third of our patient contact is face to face, be it on a limited capacity. And you know, it's been a sort of a real privilege to work with the staff that I do work with, you know. And I often say, people often think about GPs and doctors and consultants, and actually I think one of the most important staff member that perhaps the lay public doesn't like, but I think they're lifesavers, is my reception staff. And without good quality reception staff, there's no way I would be able to do my job, because they act as gatekeepers, they signpost patients, they give me a heads up, you know, Mrs. X, Y, and Z, she's going through a very difficult time, there's been a bereavement, so that you can prepare yourself properly. And I think just even all the people here on the call, I think it's amazing the pastoral support that people require, and all our people from the faith communities and people from of no faith, you know, there is a tremendous need for empathy. I think often on a typical day, sometimes between sort of maybe half to maybe sometimes 75% of my phone calls relate to some form of anxiety or depression. The stress level, the difficulty that people are going through is tremendous. Vulnerable women, children, and often because we're not seeing them, things are happening behind closed doors. And it's quite a challenge to provide good quality care to these members of our society. Also trying to, you know, everybody thinks people have smartphones and, you know, people have got sort of are IT savvy, but the population that I serve, half have got amazing access to technology, and there's another half which doesn't have a smartphone with a camera. They don't have minutes on their mobile phones. So it kind of can be very challenging to provide good quality care. I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky of where I live. I've got a wonderful family who look after me. There's some amazing cycle routes here in South Birmingham. You know, I live a stone's throw from Cannon Hill Park. So even despite lockdown, I try to sort of practice what I preach. So one of the things I always try to do is, no matter what the weather, I try to squeeze in 3 bike rides every week to get my 150 minutes of exercise. I'm being spoiled by my family with amazing meals, and so I think probably too well, and I think I need to lose a couple of pounds. But I think the support and the family we have in Birmingham, I mean the extended family and all the people that are here on this phone call, it's amazing how people have stepped up and are going beyond and above their call of duty and reaching out and providing the care and support that all the residents in Birmingham need at the moment. So thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ibrahim. We've got to go on that cycle ride one of the days. But again, you kind of reflected on what Joe was saying, like you value your receptionist above everything else. And I think it's really important that we recognize those key figures that are also keeping us safe and protected, keeping the country going, really. So thank you for that. I'm going to bring in now a really, really close friend of the Bahu Trust. Well, you're all kind of friends of the Bahu Trust. Inspector Neil Kirkpatrick. He's a constituency police inspector for Hall Green, and his team cover the wards of Sparkbrook, Sparkhill, Moseley, Kingsheath and Hall Green. Together, his teams are responsible for delivering local policing, reducing crime and building effective working partnerships with the local community. Neil's had 25 years, been a police officer for 25 years and has worked in a variety of different locations and functions across the West Midlands, including local policing. Local policing is by far the thing he enjoys the most. He's married with 2 children, 2 lovely children, aged 7 and 10. And one of the things about Neil, he's been in before the lockdown during our Friday prayers and actually took over the pulpit during Friday prayers. And we actually struggled to get him off. So we've got a really strong relationship, and he will use our mosque for community engagement and sending out messages. He's always welcome here. Neil, over to you.
Yeah, Abdullah, thank you for that introduction. And you know what, thank you to the Bahu Trust for this event, you know, thanking emergency services, but equally, you know, one of the first things I want to say is to thank you to all the faith leads yourselves as well. You know, from a policing perspective, we rely on working together with our partners in the community, and faith is really important. You know, not only the relationship we've got with Bahu, but the other faiths as well. And there's a lot of work that we're looking to develop at the minute. And, you know, that now more than ever, faith is so important, I think, to give us the hope and strength in our community. So the thanks for me is to everybody on this meeting. You know, so I've been asked to say a few words about COVID, I suppose, and the effects, you know, West Midlands Police, how it affects me and my teams. Today is quite ironic. I've got my kitchen in the background, not my office in the police station. So my daughter was sent home yesterday from school. She has to self-isolate because unfortunately a teacher at school has contracted COVID. So it just brings it home, I suppose. You know, it's affected me like everybody else, and I'm having to juggle with my wife, sort of working from home a little bit now, so we can ensure our daughter is looked after and not left home alone. So the effect on policing, there's a lot I could sort of replicate what West Midlands Fire Service and West Midlands Ambulance Service have spoken about, but I suppose from a policing perspective, this is all brand new. This is not anything that we've had to deal with before, certainly in my 25-year career, a pandemic of this nature. I think we're well rehearsed in sort of dealing with crime, in you know, other issues that affect the community, but certainly not a pandemic. And it's took us a little while, I suppose, to understand what our role is and sort of get that right. There's lots of new legislation and law that we've had to sort of absorb, digest, and interpret in a fair manner to how on how we best roll that out and use it within the community. We've developed now what we call our sort of 4E approach, I suppose, and that's the sort of backbone of how we police, and that's asking our officers to engage and explain with the community if we're seeing sort of instances that are perhaps not in line with the current sort of legislation. Educate people on what they need to do if they're not sort of following that legislation, and then as a last resort, enforce. You know, we have got the options of issuing fixed penalty notices for people that persistently breach. And you know, this is a difficult juggling act because different members of the community have got differing sort of views on COVID. So we have to take, you know, and these are sort of, I suppose, extra pressures on us all within the community as well. But certainly for the police, it's sort of getting that balance right. So we will get, you know, a negative reception, you know, of some individuals about our sort of approach to COVID. But you know, thankfully, lots of support from the majority of the community. But on this second lockdown, you know, we see it more as our responsibility to get to enforcement a lot quicker. There's got to be an acceptance, and for the protection of the wider community, that, you know, people should understand what they need to do now, and if we need to go to enforcement quicker, then you know, we're sort of prepared to do that. But it is difficult because, like you say, we are trying to sort of reflect and police on how for all of the community, but it does create a sort of day-to-day dilemma. But you know, as others have said, we should be sort of thankful. I mean, within the emergency services, we don't have to worry about unemployment. You know, I'm conscious of other people in the community. Unemployment has affected families. You know, young people, my daughter's a good example today. I feel sorry for young people and how, you know, educations have been affected. And then we've got the elderly and the vulnerable within the communities as well that have suffered. So, you know, all of these things have to be taken into consideration from policing. It's, you know, how's it affected us internally? Everything is suddenly become difficult. You know, policing relies on lots of social interaction. So whether that's sort of team briefings, team meetings, our officers going out in pairs, in vehicles together, has also all of a sudden become very sort of difficult and complicated. You know, it's remembering to, like everybody, remembering to wear our masks at the minute we leave our desks, and we're sort of, you know, going out to an incident or walking into the communal corridors. One of the biggest sort of pressures or the biggest sort of issues that I've had to deal with, though, is, you know, is reassuring staff. You know, my 4 teams, we still have to go out and sort of do the police work that we've always had to do. You know, we still need to arrest those individuals that cause the most harm in the community. We still need to protect the vulnerable, and you know, we do go out and as has been highlighted, our officers are sort of putting themselves at risk, and that just can cause worry, it just cause concern. Ambulance service has spoken about, you know, that sort of going home at the end of the shift, and you know, that our officers are the same. It's coming up with new sort of working sort of practices, so taking off the clothes, having a shower before you go home, everything. It just adds an extra layer of work in what we do. But you know what, we sort of get by and we adapt, and that's exactly what we've done here. I'm really proud of my officers and you know, the work they've achieved, but moreover, I'm really proud of all the partners we've got in our community in Hall Green, and the community at large that's given us the support and sort of pulled together and worked together themselves to sort of get through this. And you know, there is daylight on the horizon now, and I'm looking forward to certainly 2021, where we can start to perhaps get back to a sort of certainly a new normal that's sort of better than where we are now. But you know, once again, I thank you for all the kind words that have been said today, and thanks to the Bahu Trust for putting on this event.
Thank you very much, Neil, for that. As you said, this is brand new, and we're all going into the new. You know, thank you so much for those words and giving us your personal reflection. I have to say, we've got 2 more speakers, so we may be running over 10 minutes. So please, if you can, stay with us for just to hear the next 2 speakers. I mean, I blame the faith leaders for speaking for too long. No, just kidding. So if I could bring in now the next speaker, Dr. Manveer Kaur Hare. She's a consultant nephrologist at the Birmingham Heartlands Hospital and is a volunteer at Nishcom Healthcare Trust. Dr. Hare, over to you.
Thank you. Can you hear me, everyone? Thank you. Let me begin firstly by giving my thanks to you and to the Bahu Trust for giving me this opportunity to speak. Although, to be very honest with you, I guess as Joe Poynton has already said earlier, we're just doing our job. So one feels quite fraudulent, to be honest, in speaking here, but still, as requested, I will share some professional and some personal reflections with yourselves, so that's okay. And feel free to interrupt me at any point, and particularly if I'm talking too much. So I think I put a few bullet points down that I thought were points for reflection. And I think I'll begin with uncertainty and fear, which are things that have already been touched upon by other members already. So at the beginning of the pandemic, going back to March time, there was a lot of uncertainty because as a nation, and certainly within the healthcare sector, we were dealing with a new disease that nobody understood and nobody knew how to treat. And really, we were all learning together. Every day was a new learning day, and we all knew as much and as little as everybody else did, which is very strange in the healthcare setting because generally within the healthcare setting, you know how to treat a heart attack, you understand what a heart attack is, you know about asthma, and suddenly you're faced with this unknown entity, yet your aspiration is to give that same level of care that you would like to be able to give, or that same level of treatment that you would like to be able to give, but the knowledge just isn't there. So that in itself is a very strange experience. The first few weeks in March were mentally exhausting for many, and certainly for me. There was persistent talk of COVID with friends, family, news, social media, and of course at work. In the beginning, there was no guidance. And then when there was guidance, every day the guidance would change because we were all learning about this disease together. And in many ways, it was really hard, if not impossible actually, to keep up with guidance, CPR guidance, PPE, what to use, what not to use. It was absolutely exhausting. And I made the decision quite early on that I was going to stop going to social media and I was going to stop listening to the news because I was getting really tired in those early days. And I recognized that there was a long time ahead to come. Within the hospital setting, one could see actually how quickly things were spreading. At that time, of course, there wasn't, in the very early days, there wasn't actually any guidance on PPE. And I think that, as a result of that, and that's nobody's fault, that's because this was unknown, by the way, but there was definitely intra-hospital transmission during this time. And you could see how contagious this virus was and how quickly people were just falling like flies. Sadly, staff, but also sadly patients, there was intra-hospital transmission to anyone within the confines of that institutional setting. And so I made the decision actually, 1 week before national lockdown was announced, to isolate myself from my family because I had members in my family who I could consider were vulnerable. And there was definitely a fear of actually, what do I bring home? And what do I pass on to people? And one wants to be as responsible as they can. So I'd said bye to my family a week before lockdown was actually announced. And I think, we all went through lockdown together as a nation, and actually those months were really difficult. And to be on your own without seeing any family or friends, just work or nothing is actually quite challenging. So that in itself was an experience. It was really clear to me that actually a lot of staff were very anxious and very scared. They were scared because guidance was changing so much. They were scared about what they might contract. Are they safe? How can they protect themselves? How can they protect patients? And like me, what are they taking home to their loved ones who also they did not want to hurt or jeopardize or put in any risk? So this was interesting. But like I said, we've been through lockdown as a nation, and although I think people are getting tired, it's amazing how resilient people actually are in the NHS and outside of it. In the time of lockdown, of course, I was a healthcare worker, but I was also a healthcare service user or a relative of a service user. So quite early on in lockdown, we lost my auntie, my dad's sister. And it took courage actually to drop her off in hospital, knowing that we were probably never going to see her again. And effectively saying our goodbyes then. And indeed, that is sadly what happened. We left her and a few days later she passed away, and we were never able to visit her until after she had passed away. And of course, at that time, funeral arrangements, etc., were also difficult. And one wasn't able to say goodbye in the conventional ways that they would like to have done. Still, things still happened beautifully, but in a very different way. And the entire experience took courage. And it was a reminder, actually, that we're all mortal. Emergency workers or not, actually, we are people first, and then we are healthcare workers within that capacity. It was also a prick to my conscience, and I can certainly say the team that I work with were very conscientious of this, regardless of my personal experiences, to keep communication with the relatives. You know, this was my example, actually, there were many relatives. Hospitals were close to visiting. Patients were anxious, some of them couldn't ring their loved ones. Relatives were very anxious, they couldn't see their loved ones, they couldn't necessarily speak to them, particularly when people were short of breath. They wouldn't want to ring up at home because, you know, that's physically demanding, for example. So it was nice to see actually how thoughtful even the staff and the team were. And actually our junior doctors came up with the idea of a patient communication board. So they bought of their own accord a massive big whiteboard that they put up on the staff ward, and just to make sure that there was continuity between shift patterns. They had some sort of a system to make sure that every other day, as a minimum, we spoke to patients' relatives so that they knew what was going on, or at least we made an attempt to do this. So that was really heartwarming for me to see that was coming from our junior doctors and how thoughtful they were. As I said, transmission was a really big thing in the first wave in particular, and I think we've learned since then, we now have a better understanding of when to use PPE, what type of PPE, and we're much more consistent. So hopefully intra-hospital transmission and intra-institutional transmission, even care homes outside of the hospital setting, will be better this time around, one hopes. I think resource was also an issue, and this was quite interesting to me. Of course, we've spoken about PPE. There was a lot of staff sickness in the first wave because we were all dropping off like flies, and you could tell where, you know, who got infected by whom and what they were doing in which procedure room, etc., etc. I've never seen anything like it, to be honest with you. And I think in some ways there's less physical staff sickness in the second wave, but mental health, I think, is definitely becoming a bigger issue as the nation, and certainly emergency workers, certainly those within hospitals, I can say, my own colleagues and friends are getting tired. And I think there's an element of burnout, but there's still resilience and people are going, which is good. Oxygen was something interesting. Oxygen is something that we take for granted. We're not very good at prescribing it as doctors. But yeah, we nearly ran out of oxygen, something I never thought would be possible. And I think there are some concerns in the second wave that we might run out of oxygen, but let's see how things go. I think there was also something about the way in which we practice. I mean, the first wave was very unsettling in some ways, because this was something foreign. But now that we have a better understanding of this illness, it's good to see that practice is more standardized. In the first wave, you know, we were doing one thing in our hospital, different hospitals in the same city were doing different things for the same condition. London was doing something different. And rightfully, people, patients, relatives, colleagues would question, well, why are you doing this when they're doing that? And the answer was because nobody knew what we were doing. And sometimes as a doctor, this was ethically very challenging in some of the decisions that had to be made. And I think as a body, we've now learned from those experiences. Some things have gone better, some things have gone not as well. But we now know, we're better prepared in that sense to deal with the second wave. One of the things, and I'm coming to an end now, one of the things that really struck me in all of this was actually human kindness. I've never seen so many people, and in this case, a whole nation, come together to help one another and mobilize so quickly. The nation moved quickly, people moved quickly, and you know what? Even the NHS moved quickly, which doesn't happen so easily. To be honest, I think that as emergency workers, I personally feel that we were showered with kindness. And like I said, in many ways, we're just doing our job. So I'm not really sure that we were deserving of this. One feels a bit fraudulent, but you know, people would make hair caps and face masks and donate food, whether it was bought sandwiches, whether it was actually air hostesses were coming in to man a wellbeing centre. We've never had a wellbeing centre, just so that staff could get some respite. Actually, these things went a really long way. And one is not sure that they're deserving of it, but incredibly grateful for all the acts of kindness that were shown. And to be honest, one can't say enough thank you to the public for the generosity that they have shown. On a personal note, I was really touched by my own family, by my friends and members of my congregation, many of whom reached out randomly. People that I never expected to ring or message me would message just to find out how I was. And that really touched me, to be honest. And these acts of kindness inspired me to want to be better, want to be kinder. So I think in summary, actually, whilst COVID has been a very challenging time and there's a glimmer of hope with the vaccination, though we're still not out of it, actually, amidst this difficulty, we have also seen a reminder of the resilience of human kindness, unity and optimism, and especially of how powerful these attributes are when we stand together as a human family. And I think gratitude goes to everyone.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hare. Thank you for that wonderful insight. And I felt the initial frustrations that you must have gone through, you know, not having that scientific knowledge at that time. So really appreciate you being. Sorry, we have run over, but I'm going to bring in the last speaker. So Maria Buchanan is a nurse in the emergency department who has been working within the health sector and hospital setting for around 7 years. Maria has also run various support groups for mental health in order to reduce youth violence. Maria has also nursed during an expedition to the Amazon jungle. Maria, sorry, there's not much time, but over to you.
Hi, thank you very much for that introduction, and thank you for everyone who's spoken and shared their personal reflections as well. So for me, COVID was quite different. I work in the emergency department at Queen Elizabeth as a registered nurse. So I was there in the early stages. I think even in the early stages, it was quite difficult. There was lots of, I think the anxiety started kicking in then, and I think people kind of have to remember that A&E has always been a very, very busy place. We don't even have time to do our job on a normal day, let alone when COVID started to creep in, and then, you know, people were getting very anxious in terms of, hold on, actually, I think everyone had a sense of we know what's coming, and that made everyone feel really anxious because we started questioning things like, actually, do we have enough ventilators? Do we have enough staff? Do we have enough space in ITU? Will our department be able to manage this when we're struggling just on a normal day in February? So it was quite scary. For me personally, I actually got signed off due to being pregnant. So even for me personally, it was quite weird because, you know, working in the NHS, they're usually asking you to come in for overtime and, you know, they want you in at all times. So for them to actually say, actually, Mario, we're really not sure that this is safe for you and we want you to stay at home and we're not sure what's going to happen in the future, it was really quite scary for me. There was a real sense of unknowing for me, myself, but also a lot of my colleagues were unsure of what was going to happen. A lot of my colleagues were unsure about how the department would handle this, what they would be asked to do. A lot of people, you know, I said before, had no idea about what this virus actually was. Was it as bad as people were saying? How does it actually affect people, and how can we as nurses support our patients? On behalf of my colleagues who continued to work through the pandemic, I really felt that there was a sense of fatigue. I think just the fact that, as I said before, this pandemic didn't just happen after people had rested and been prepared for it. This had come at a time when A&E nursing is already just so difficult. So having this happen on top of that, there was a real sense of fatigue, there was trauma, you know, a lot of healthcare workers suffered from PTSD, and I think that just worsened through this time. A lot of isolation from families, and I think the guilt was a real massive thing, where you were almost split into two people, where you wanted to help your patients and be there for your patients as you always are, but then also you had to really think about your responsibility and your accountability of also looking after your family, and, you know, contracting anything that could put your family members at risk. So there was a real sense of guilt and anxiety about that as well. But I think, you know, as mentioned by everybody else, I think one of the best things that could have happened for the NHS, for my colleagues, for me personally, and for the whole community, is that there was a real sense of, right, we really have to support each other now. And, you know, even in terms of the claps for the NHS, that was a really lovely gesture whilst it happened, and, you know, it really motivated a lot of people. But then following on after that, I think it was, you know, I think the nurses that are still there working now would really question what comes after that. But I think things like this is what we need and what actually matters. It's the time and the recognition and just the support as a community. And I think, you know, not even just for nurses, but just on a human level, to be able to support each other and to take on that role of, you know, really looking out and empathizing with one another. I think that's one of the best things that anyone could have ever imagined to come out of this pandemic. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much, Maria. That was really, I think that was a good account of how some of your colleagues are feeling. It's, you know, it's heartwarming to see the clapping for our emergency services. But what comes next? What support will they get going forward? Will they continue to be valued? Most of you, the faith leaders and the representatives from the emergency services, have actually made so many points that I don't need to really do a long concluding comment. All I want to say is, to all the faith leaders, I thank you so much for some of your words, some of your reflections that you shared. They were really heartwarming. And I want to thank all the representatives from the emergency service. I'm not going to name everyone, but all of you today who have spoken. I think you've given me food for thought. Some of the things I hadn't thought about before, you've made me think. And it really brings it home that you're just human beings at the end of the day. You know, you may be superhuman in our eyes, but actually you have the same fears that we have. So I'd like to close this celebration today, this service today, and on behalf of the Bahu Trust, on behalf of all of us here in the community, we want to say thank you to you. Our prayers and du'as are with you now and going forward. Thank you so much.